Welcome back, everyone, to the Creative Movers podcast. Today, our special guest is Kevin Fields, also known as KFlow. KFlow, well, much love for coming through.
Appreciate you guys for having me. This is special.
Yes, sir. I want to just share a little bit about yourself. Some things I want to share personally. I met Kevin through a couple of dance events, dance battles out here in LA. I know we've worked together in Carnival, the performance there.
Yeah.
And I know I've just seen you, I think, street performing with Mirror Man and just all over LA. Anything you want to add to that or let people know about yourself?
Yeah. So the Mirror Man has been kind of took off this year, but I've had it for 5 years. And the interesting part about it is I had the character for probably about 3 or 4 years before I even brought it to a business mindset. Because I didn't want to come to somebody like, hey, I just bought this suit. This is, and I didn't really have it figured out because it's kind of a weird thing to move in. And I had to kind of create a style around the restrictions of it. So,
What is Mirror Man for people they just heard that term? What is this outfit, this character?
so the character, what it symbolizes to me is what the mirror is it's a reflection. So even when I perform, a lot of times I reflect who I'm performing for. So if you're sitting like that, I would start like this. You know what I mean? If you're taking a drink, I would start with taking a drink.
Okay.
So it is a thing that I reflect so that I can connect to the crowd. Because when you're in LA, everyone's kind of seen it all. So if you don't connect to what they're doing, they don't even really pay attention. Because I'll go to a lot of restaurants or venues, and these people will either pay attention to me or they'll completely ignore me. And so you kind of just like, okay, they don't want me to dance for them. I'm not going to go bug them. So I really am aware of the people I'm dancing for because it seems to work on more of a crowd work scale, not a stage scale. So stage is cool, but I don't really connect to the individual as much as if it was just like one-on-one almost.
Interesting. Would you say you prefer one-on-one interactions versus stage?
Yeah, I did an event once, and the event had a total of 500 million followers, right? Because it was for a charity, so it was like a lot of influencers there. And whenever I performed, I can't really see much in the Mirror Man, but whenever I watched the playback, everybody in the audience was talking to each other. No one was watching the performance. Since then, I prefer crowd work.
Okay. Okay. Now, this Mirror Man suit that you've created, correct? Piece by piece?
I didn't create it. There's a company that makes it in Japan, and I just sent them my measurements.
Okay.
And then I'm kind of working on different characters within that kind of realm.
Different characters. Now, can you explain to me what does it mean working with different characters? What does it mean to have
It's like different mindsets. Kind of like in popping, you can be a puppet, you can be a toy. So with the Mirror Man, I'm almost kind of either acting like one of those characters, but I'll get more specific depending on who I'm in front of. So it really just depends. And I worked at Universal Studios, and one of the things I did there is every time I'd go on set, I was a scare actor, and I was in this movie quality masks and outfit. And something I did creatively to challenge my creativity is I would create a new character each time I'd go out, and then I'd try to scare the guests as this new character that I would make.
That you've created in your mind.
In my mind, yeah. And so I did that for 2 years, and I just feel like I have endless characters, and they just keep getting created because of this mindset.
Interesting. So from what I'm hearing, I know we've talked before, you seem to be pretty comfortable around different groups of people, different people from all walks of life, talking with people, working with people. Do you find there to be how do you do it, or is there a creativeness to that? Is there an art of how do you go about working with others, connecting with audiences, or one-to-one? Is there a certain creative approach you look at that, or?
I think it's just being open. I feel like a lot of creatives, they have this thing in their head, and they like, oh, I got this idea. I want to stick to this and only this and do that. I am very empathic and I absorb my surroundings very well, and I'm very sensitive to body language. So depending on people's body language, that is what sort of creates the path of how I create. Depending on, like, if I'm performing and this person's like,
Right.
then I'm going to probably not even perform for them. Or if they're like this, or there's so many different ways to adjust my creative flow. So a lot of times it gets sparked with just a simple idea of, okay, I'm going to do robot. Okay, I'm going to now do a task with a robot where I'm going to, and then it just like kind of builds off of the people that I'm in front of. I never really sort of created on my own. There's always an influence of some sort.
Yeah, and as you're saying, that influences the person, the people around you. That is great. Because it's interesting. I think sometimes, and I've had this thought as well, as I'm going to create something, but I need to be separated from my environment, and this idea is going to come from within or from my mind. But it sounds like you are saying, well, I'm going to let it come to me. The environment will give me the creative message or the idea. The person, their body language, how they're interacting. Their age.
Because it's just like, if you're a kid, you're probably going to be somewhat into these sort of things. If you're an adult, you're probably interested in more mature ideas. And so, yeah, it just kind of, there's a lot of, like, I call it a survey system.
A survey system.
So there's like questions I ask myself about a person to kind of generalize or make a generalization about what they would like. So it kind of gives me a formula to where whoever I am with or whatever client I'm with, I adjust to who they are.
You're adjusting to what the client is,
Yes.
how they are.
Or the person, the guest, fan, whoever. Because I've been performing just in all different kinds of environments. So yeah, it just really depends the crowd. Sometimes there's even a certain crowd. You're like, okay, they probably would like something like this. You know what I mean? So you always have to just be open. Because a lot of my performances, I don't plan out. I usually pick the song day of or 10 minutes before. Because when I first moved to LA, I was forced to choose a song a month out, and I was feeling this song so much. I like cried when I thought of the concept and what it meant. And then I performed it, and I lost that fire that I had. And so I like to really be free in my options, and whatever I'm feeling in that moment, I like to do, because I like to freestyle more than I like to decide months ahead or plan before. So it's an interesting way of doing it, but
Yeah.
a lot of people that I work for don't like that way.
The freestyle. Let's just absorb what's here and let's create based off of the moment.
Yeah, because I don't know what the crowd is going to be like. I don't know what the vibe is at this venue yet. I haven't been there, so the foolproof plan is to go there, absorb the unknown, and then produce what I think would work best.
Do you find in other areas of life, because it sounds, I know we're talking more of a business of you working in LA, working with different clients, people, do you find yourself taking this creative energy and applying in other areas of your life outside of dance, outside of performing?
Yeah, I think so. And it really unlocked at one of your recent creative parties or get together. I don't know what to call it.
Yeah, get together.
Yeah, Clocks. He said something that, you know what, if you actually think about it, everything is creative.
Clocks is a friend of ours, a mutual dance friend.
Yeah, and he was like, paying your bills, you have to be creative on how you would make money to pay your bills, and just everything that we do in life, it's a creative decision. So I've always kind of had that, but he kind of made me woke about, like, whoa, we're like way more creative than we even think that we are.
Is there something perhaps last year that you found yourself having to be creative or being creative in navigating maybe a situation, an event, a problem solving? Is there something that comes to mind that you felt, I have to be creative, or I was creative in this moment, and maybe it worked out, maybe it didn't?
I think the whole survey system idea, that was kind of made, I had a revelation last year of just like of a survey system to understand a person, whether you perform for them or whether you teach for them, or, you know, whatever it is you're doing for them, you have to ask them the right questions. If you don't ask them the right questions, you're not present. and you don't know what to do.
Hmm.
So you kind of, because one of my ideologies for the survey system is like, let's say I'm teaching a kid,
Okay.
right? And this kid, like for instance, I taught this one kid, his name was Bollock, and he loved to draw and make his own Pokemon cards.
Hmm.
And so whenever we would dance, I'd be like, okay, what's this card? What does this guy do? What's his power? Okay, how will we show that in movement? You know what I mean?
Ah, you translate it. You understand them, where they're coming from, the survey.
And he's like, and then the next lesson, he was like, yeah, boom. He had like 20 more
Yes.
characters that breathe fire or made ice and
Yes.
did all these different cool things. And then he'd be sweaty at the end of the lesson because he was so invested into his ideas, you know?
I think that's beautiful. And you're saying this is the survey method of understanding, asking what is the person interested in, their client, like you said, their age, all these things matter. And you're then able to, again, clarify me if I'm misinterpreting this, but you're able to then, with your art form, say, oh, okay, I can meet you there. I can meet what you're saying with movement, with dance. Even though you don't know dance, you're not a dancer, but I can show you now.
I can show you what dance is with the way that you think about life.
With the way that you think about life. Wow.
Yeah.
Would you say this can, all art forms can take this kind of survey style?
Yeah, I
and
think it can
it
apply to anything.
in anything?
Yeah,
Nice.
I really do.
Nice. I want to ask a little bit about, I also know that you partner dance, you teach, right, classes?
Yeah, ballroom.
Ballroom, and you've worked with large groups of people, you've
Yeah.
worked with just one-on-one, personal.
Yeah.
Has there been a moment where maybe something just didn't click or connect with the client, the person, and how did you maybe work around that, or how did you move forward? Because I know, as life is, sometimes we try to figure something out, and maybe it's just not clicking, or it's like, why can't I meet them there? Or
I think it's kind of drawing the line in the sand, per se, of
okay,
making the client realize, because this is the first thing you learn in ballroom school, was the client doesn't know what they don't know, right? So if they come to you, they're like, oh, I want to learn salsa. I'll be like, okay, do you know what salsa is? They'll be like, you know what I mean? They don't even know. They just know of it. So making them realize sort of the boundaries. It's like, okay, you want to learn salsa? Why do you want to learn salsa? Do you just want to learn it just because, or do you want to go socialize? There's different reasons to learn it, and if I don't know those reasons, I can't give you the product that you want. So that again goes into the survey system of figuring out what they want and letting them know that they're not educated on these things, so you got to educate them on the things so they do know what they want. Because in a lot of times I have to educate them on what they want because they really don't know, because dance is a sort of a foreign language that people don't understand until they're educated. So I treat it, even if it's a grown man or a grown woman and they're asking me to learn a certain thing,
right,
their dance is as old as how much time they've put into it. So if they're, 30 years old coming to me wanting to learn salsa, then their age is, however much time they put into it. You put 6 months into it, you put a year into it.
right.
So you have to teach them like they're a kid, because that's how much time they've put into dance.
Wow. I love, again, I want to go back to just this, your experience with different people, and your comment about absorbing the environment. Again, absorbing what is the client need, or what are they saying, how are they responding and reacting. I think that's just it's a great way to connect, to meet them, to meet that person. 'Cause I think sometimes we get in our own head, or we're like, why doesn't this person understand the art form I'm trying to teach them? Or we might get ourselves frustrated. I'd like to ask you a little bit about the sessions that you host every Monday night in Santa Monica. This is something that I've attended multiple times.
Yeah, you've come to most of them.
I know. I love it. It's a great vibe. Like,
Yeah.
for those that don't, you're maybe not familiar with sessions or the dance world, sessions are a place where dancers gather to exchange, share knowledge. There can be different reasons or intentions, but mostly I think people would say it's a get-together of dancers. There's music, and people are going in the circle, sharing rounds, exchanges. And all styles are welcomed. Some sessions have specific styles.
Yeah.
Some sessions, they're just specific styles of dance that they're focusing on. But Kevin, tell me a little bit about, or our audience, what are these sessions that you're hosting, and what's so different? What's the difference, you would say, between your sessions and the typical sessions?
So man, all the years I've lived in LA, I've just showed up to every different kind of session. I like low key had a problem with each session that I went to, and I'd drive home and have no music, and I would think about why that session didn't do it for me. It would have some pros, but it also would have a lot of cons. And like one of them, I would go to this session, and I would get there, and all the dancers would be staring into the mirror, and they'd be in like a window by themselves. And I would approach some of the dancers and be like, is this a session or what? They're like, yeah, no, I'm working on my stuff. So you just like let me do my thing over here. And I'd be like, that's an interesting way to sesh.
Right, because people are coming together, but
two session, but they would go and stare in the mirror.
Right, and I think also for people that are not dancers, maybe they can relate this to any gatherings of their art form.
Exactly. So I felt a disconnect with that, of people literally not wanting to connect.
Okay.
It's like you could have done this at home, but if you're going to a session, the kind of point of it is to connect as much as possible, and the exchange is what I thrive off of. I love to exchange, and that's the route I took as a dancer. I chose to take the path of going to sessions that are, really long, and you'd be able to exchange and kind of find your people, your OGs, your mentors, who you're going to learn from. And so all the things that I learned about all the different sessions that I went to was I wanted to make it more about the exchange. And then my session is very different because it's out in the public eye. And so there's a lot of people, and you have a lot of fun with this aspect of it. There'll be, maybe a little kid that walks by, and then instead of us just kind of working on things, I'm now performing for a kid who's just like seeing dance for the first time. Because I think that's what sparked me at a young age is I saw my first street dancer on Fisherman's Wharf in San Francisco. And it was a gold man all painted in gold. And my family was walking, and I got stopped in my tracks. My family kept on walking. I think I might even got lost that day because I was just like, this is the coolest thing I've ever seen.
Wow.
So whenever we have our session, we try to almost educate the youth on what dance is via our performance, and then I feel like that stays with them.
Right.
And they take that home, and they might play with their toys differently, or they might, have this spark, of, inspiration.
It's almost reminds me, I guess, of if musicians decided to get together outside and jam and just start playing. We're going to just start playing, and the public is walking by. And that's the thing I find unique about the sessions that you host in Santa Monica is that it's open to the public, as in it's literally people are walking all around the pier, down the tunnel, and people are stopping. Every time it's different faces, and you're meeting different people. And again, it's funny because as we're talking and you're sharing about, I keep wanting to go back to the survey method of knowing the audience and how you really play off of your environment. Again, a session that you've curated that is about the audience there. There's people watching, and it's fascinating. I find it, again, just how you've brought it to life. Can I ask you, what was that process? How did you come up with the idea to host this session in Santa Monica? How did you know about it? How did you find it? Because it wasn't there. And then were you just sitting and the idea just came? Or what was this process to the beginning of that idea to where it is now? What was that process?
So I think I started to throw sessions about 4 or 5 years ago, like kind of more seriously, at my Burbank house.
Yes.
When I lived in Burbank, we had a huge backyard, and then my room was like a little mini studio with a mirror. So it started off small, and then people started to find out about it. And then at one point, I think we had like 150 people because there was a battle in town. There was like 150 people in my backyard.
Wow.
And those kind of moments just always resonated with me. I was just like, wow, this is powerful. This is beyond me. There's people from all over the world in my backyard. And kind of just hearing people's feedback and trial and error of what I could have done better, because I'm always open to hear a better version of what I'm doing. And I've been lucky enough to hear people from around the world. They'll be like, yeah, this was really dope, but then, if you could have done it, oh, what, And you kind of have this back and forth with everything. And then this spot was actually found because I was just shooting with Graph.
A friend of ours, right?
Yes.
Right.
Another popper. And we would shoot there all the time, and it was just a spot that we never got bothered. And so even when people come from out of town and I want to shoot or create with them, I like to go to a spot that is unbothered, to where no one's going to mess with you, no cop's going to interrupt. Because you go to a lot of spots in LA, even if you go above the pier, they'd be like, yeah, you can't shoot here.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Correct.
And there's just like millions of spots like that in LA. So going through that process, I found that spot was really close to my house, one. And then two, I've been there when cops are going by, and they're completely fine with it. There's not really any bums that are around here. It's a pretty safe spot. So after kind of running into those, I was like, man, this is going to be the spot. Let me just do a trial period, have a sesh, post it on Instagram, and see what comes of it. And then I think you came to one of the first ones, and then it just kind of kept growing, and it really started to benefit me and others so much that now I will always do the Monday session, even if I'm not feeling well. It's such a good time and a good space, and I always grow from it because I get to really experiment all the things that I've been thinking about that week, and it's good to get that release. And then also putting people on to what I'm working on in that time helps me understand my creativity because I'm explaining it. I'm not just like thinking about it. I'm like explaining, hey, I was watching Walt Disney this week, and we were watching cartoons from the 1934, and I was learning how their movements is just like the animation moves we do today.
Right.
And so when I get to explain that, I get to dive further into my subconscious. And I like even dream about this stuff too, because of how much of my life is surrounded by just creativity.
Wow. It's beautiful to see something come into fruition, from just internally a thought, and how it represents you. Like, you can see the qualities of the session. Again, you were the one to go and to host these sessions. So there is a certain energy essence of yourself there, of why you're the one to kind of host it there. It makes sense. No, that's fascinating. What would you tell someone out there that maybe they don't have a session or a place they can go? Maybe they want to create a place that they can play and create and have other people in the same artistry come through, but they just don't know where to begin or how to do it. What would you share with them?
I would say there's always an abundance more than what we think. Like, for instance, I moved to LA, I couldn't afford classes, right? Everybody that I knew was taking that route. They're going to Movement Lifestyle, they're going to Millennium, they're going to, all these different places. I told myself I was going to make my money doing anything else but dance, so I didn't have any money. And I couldn't afford to go anywhere with money. I couldn't pay an OG to teach me. I couldn't pay anybody to do anything. So I had to get creative with how I trained. And so I probably have 10,000 hours just in parking lots.
In parking lots?
Parking
just
lots.
Training, practicing at a park.
Yeah, and I would meet with one other friend, two other friends, whatever. It's kind of how my crew was born, Flow Key. And so we would just train anywhere. And so whenever you have that mindset of you can just do it, you just have to execute. If you want to make a session, do it. If it doesn't work at this place, try another place. You know what I mean? But you don't need to have all the things you think you need to create something. You can do anything from nothing. When I came here, I had nothing. I had no money, no knowledge, just my energy. And so I knew I wasn't going to do anything else. I didn't have any backup plans. So because of that, it forced me to get creative. And there was a lot of times it took me to the edge of life where I didn't know how I was going to pay rent. I didn't know how I was going to get my next meal. And a lot of times I would go out and I would street dance and I would make enough money for that day for that meal.
Wow.
You know what I mean? And to be in that kind of starving artist, and I know I'm not giving up, it makes it to where there's not anything that's going to get in your way. So if you want my advice, don't let your excuses get in the way. Overcome them with the creative thought process. It might not work the first time, so then just try again. And then again, and again.
Keep going.
Keep
Just keep going.
It's going to work eventually.
Keep going.
It won't work if you give up.
Right.
But if you keep on trying, I'm sure something's going to come out of it. And I think that's why the session that I have is so good, is because I failed so many times to try to make it happen in other situations.
And we hear that all over. People saying you have to fail. You know, throw the dart, even if you miss 100 times, but keep going. Like,
I get that one bullseye.
Exactly. Where would you say you've learned? Is that something you've learned? This persistence, this consistency to keep going and pushing? Is this something that was learned? Is it something that you just naturally feel you have within you?
Yeah, so I think where it was birthed was 14 years ago. I had found out I had spinal bifida. And so what that is this basically my L5 didn't finish forming. So my vertebrae is supposed to be like this, right? But it's like this. Doctor said I wasn't going to be able to play sports, wasn't going to be able to dance, basically wasn't going to be able to do anything, right? And so I went through this process of like not being able to walk, not being able to sleep, not be able to do anything really. And so it created this beast inside, I like to call. And whenever I went through that, I basically just studied the body and health and nutrition and found out all the things I needed to learn about the body, because I went to the specialist, the back specialist, and what they were doing was making it worse. And it was like I wasn't able to sleep more, and I wasn't able to do even more because of the doctor. So it made me stop relying on outside sources and take responsibility for my own health.
Only you can, at the end of the day, you have to decide your choices and what you're going to do.
And so now, since I raised myself from the ashes, I just feel unstoppable, because I came from like, it felt death. Because I went through that like insomnia for like probably a couple years of that, and it was a very weird time of my life, but I'm blessed to have gone through that, because now I can endure anything.
Wow.
Doesn't matter what you put me through, because I survived like just chaos.
Yeah. Wow. No, that's in a sense it's strange, but also it's beautiful, because it's like the fire, right, going into the furnace, but then it's like what comes out of it. I want to, my last question, comment, just piece of conversation is, what would you tell someone that says, I would like to be more creative, I would like to explore this life and just experience the new and the fresh and the novelties of it, and in my work, in my life, I just want to creative and everything around that. What would you tell them?
I would just say be realistic about your allocating, about how you allocate your time. Because if you make a creative schedule of when you leave yourself open for creativity, you're going to have a more capacity to be creative. But if you only put 5 minutes a day, you're going to be 5 minutes of a creative a day. If you want to do 12 hours of creativity, some people like to use the secret of staying up late at night when you're thinking weird to be creative. You know, I know a lot of like other different art forms, they do it really late at night so they can kind of get weird, and you know, everyone's asleep during that time, you're alone, your thoughts kind of wander, and sometimes you run into something. So allocate the time to be creative. Even if you don't feel creative, you don't feel inspired, allocate the time to become inspired.
Wow. Thank you for that, Kevin. Much love. I appreciate that.
Yeah. No, thank you guys for having me. This has been a really beautiful conversation.
Yes, sir.
Boop.